They're pushing. Mike, how did you enjoy the quote-unquote pointless Monday Night Football game between the Niners and Lions? But I guess nobody reminded the Niners or Lions there was nothing left to play for because they went all out last night.
Yeah, boy, that was a heck of a football game. And, you got to give Dan Campbell a lot of credit because you would say risk of injury. They've already had so many, let's sit everybody. But, that's what they stand for. They want to compete. And now they have a really short week. And here we go again and, playing Minnesota for all the marbles. So, conventional wisdom and law said not to play. But obviously, Dan Campbell believes in what he believes in. And, it's been very successful for them so far.
When the Jets and the Rams took both Jared Goff and Sam Darnold in the top 5 picks of the NFL draft, this is exactly what they expected to happen, right? Duking it out for the number 1 seed. I guess it just happened in different places. But Mike T, the development of these guys, the way that they've succeeded elsewhere outside of where they've been drafted after being discarded, what does that say about, number 1, the context in which these quarterbacks get drafted into, but then also, number 2, maybe the scouts and all the GMs and people that had the high grades on them were right. It was just the wrong situation.
Yeah, it's really – how about this? At the end of last season, both Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were actually on Carolina at the same point.
Right.
So it's really amazing. Like when you think about how this quarterback trajectory, Geno Smith on 4 teams, Sam Darnold on 4 teams, Baker Mayfield on 4 teams. So – it's really remarkable. Like quarterback development does not happen in a straight line, and and arguably Sean McVay is as talented as any offensive coach out there. He gave over $100 million in guaranteed money to Jared Goff, and they still moved on from him.
Man.
So that being said, with quarterback development kind of deteriorating in certain organizations in the NFL right now, we've got this age of player empowerment at every level of the game. Shedeur Sanders has talked about, rather Deion Sanders has talked about giving a veto to a team that might want to draft Shedeur Sanders if he thinks it's not the right fit. Do you see us going down a path where maybe agents, maybe players themselves or people surrounding players say, we're not going to send you here even if you're the number 1 pick? Because if you go to this team, you're going to waste away the first 6 years of your career and your stock will plummet. If you get pushed back to a better environment, you'll actually have a good NFL career because Darnold is a success story. Geno Smith, success story. Yes, they both started in the same state with an organization you're familiar with, but we're seeing that happen before our eyes and include Baker Mayfield in that list.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I think we're going to get there because I think all you need to do is scare the incumbent team, meaning that let's say it's the Patriots on the clock and Travis Hunter says, I don't want to play there. New England doesn't have to believe that necessarily he'll do that, but they just have to be concerned enough to say, hey, let's maximize the trade value. I think that day is coming. I don't know if it's this year or next year, but at some point, these players are coming in with enough sort of like cachet, financial, otherwise, to say like, hey, I'm not going to a team I don't want to go to.
Mike Tannenbaum joining us here on Theoretically Speaking, our ESPN front office insider, our guy that's also currently with the 33rd team, helping the Jets find the new leaders of that franchise. I'm just curious, Mike T. I mean, it's the elephant in the room when you talk about the Jets and the quarterback position, what CCAT kind of alluded to. How do the Jets reclaim their image and their ability to make people believe that they can get the most out of quarterbacks going forward, and how much is this offseason going to be important towards that?
Yeah, first you got a new coach at GM, but, look, there's some pieces there. Couple of good offensive linemen, and typically, like we saw last night, guys, show me a good offensive line, I'll show you a good offense. And Detroit arguably has the best offensive line. Minnesota has a very good offensive line. San Francisco's had a lot of injuries, including Trent Williams, who may be the best left tackle in the game. So that, to me, when you look at Tom Brady's decision a couple of years ago, one of the reasons he went to Tampa Bay was the quality of that line.
Yeah, and it paid off because we saw the difference in a good line and a bad line in that Super Bowl with Brady versus Mahomes. Mike T, speaking of good offensive lines, the Eagles have a pretty hefty one in front of Saquon Barkley. He's 101 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's NFL record for rushing yards in a season. They play against the Giants, his former team. If you're GM of an organization that's in this situation, number 1, how much does this single-season rushing record mean to you and you feel like your team and roster? And number 2, are you encouraging, if Saquon wants to do it, your head coach to let him get out there and play for it?
Yeah, this is a tough one because, if the players all want to go for it, you understand that and the competitiveness of it and certainly, the history of what's at stake. With that said, guys, we're not chasing a record. We're chasing a ring, and we could win one this year. We're going to be the 2 seed. So this is a tough one. If it was up to me, I would sit them. But if there was overwhelming support from the locker room, I certainly would understand it because, this is a prideful award, including obviously the offensive line as well.
Right, and keeping that offensive line happy could be beneficial. If they get that record, maybe they're a little bit more inspired throughout the playoff run. I'm curious to see what they do. I think the latest is Sirianni says he's going to he's undecided, and he's going to lean on the players. And I believe if that's the correct call he's making, the players are likely going to budge for it to happen. We'll see what happens in that case. Again, we saw what happened last night. I'm curious for you. C-Cat and I both agreed. It feels like Brock Purdy's stock kind of went down after this season with the Niners as they missed the playoffs, and he threw 2 pivotal picks last night that helped the Lions come back and win. If you're a GM right now, do you think I like to put that one threshold as $50 million. Is he a $50 million plus per year quarterback? After what you've seen, is Brock Purdy in that conversation, or should the Niners try to get him at a bigger discount?
Yeah, I don't know if he's worth that, but, part of the equation, it's a very fair question, is what does the alternative look like? And I'm sure they may be second-guessing themselves saying, hey, we had Sam Darnold here. Did we go with the wrong quarterback? So I think he's a really good quarterback in Brock Purdy. Maybe he's closer to $30 million like Baker Mayfield. But when you don't have one, he looks pretty good, even though he may not be, certainly, an elite player.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs got right in there and scored a touchdown. And I know it's like, again, that's a small sample size and whatnot, but we've seen Dobbs do that in multiple scenarios. And like you said, Sam Darnold as well was just in your locker room. Now he is contending for the 1 seed. It's crazy just how much circumstances can help elevate guys. I feel like Kyle Shanahan could get it done with anybody these days, though.
That's what I was going to get at, Theo. Mike, when you look at the 49ers, you told us earlier about really if you see a good offense, it's a good offensive line behind that more likely than not. Where does the share of kind of credit go to as to why that is a great quarterback environment? Is it mostly Shanahan? Is it mostly the high dollars spent on the weapons around the quarterback position? Is the offensive line? Is there one thing you can point to and say, without that, the 49ers are not a quarterback building franchise?
Yeah. Look, I think it's a little bit of everything, but when they're healthy with that scheme and their weapons, including CMC and Brandon Ayuk, they're really hard to beat. And, and that's when you say, hey, could they win with Darnold? Could they win with Josh Dobbs? Or certainly it didn't work with Trey Lance. But I think it's a little bit about the scheme, the coaching, and the skill players.
Mike, see, would the NFL ever consider doing what the NBA does and changing the way they seed teams just based off? I mean, I know you don't want to go just based off of 1 year, but the NFC looks incredibly wonky with a team like the Buccaneers or Falcons getting a home game and a 14-win team out of the Lions and Vikings having to go on the road, as well as the 11-win teams that are likely have to do the same. Like, is that ever something they would actually consider?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like maybe, the division winner makes the playoffs, but then you reseed it based on wins. That makes all the sense in the world to me. I think Detroit and Minnesota both earned, a home game.
It is going to be crazy to see that a team with 14 wins, literally having to go on the road and play a team that inched its way into the playoffs in a terrible division. We'll see how that shakes out. Last thing I want to ask you, though, Mike T, before we let you go and celebrate your early New Year's Eve evening, we kind of know about who the team to beat in the AFC is. C-Cat and I have kind of both also settled in the NFC that it might just be the Detroit Lions because of how many ways they can attack you on offense. Between the Lions, Eagles, Vikings, and maybe the Packers, who do you look at as the favorite now coming out of the NFC?
I'm still going to go with Detroit. I just think they're unstoppable on offense. Yeah. They have to play different, maybe more four-down football. Maybe they got a couple guys back like Alex Anzalone, amongst others. But they're going to have to outscore teams. But I think they can, guys, just because their offensive line's so good. And, again, deep skill players. And I believe David Montgomery is going to play this week against the Vikings.
Wow. Is he coming back that quick? That'll be crazy.
Yeah, I did not think that.
I believe he is, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's going to be exciting to see. The Lions have been, like you said, a force that's been hard to reckon with, and they're always a good show, so that's got to be something that we love. Mike T, appreciate your time. Enjoy your early evening, and we'll watch the ball drop for you. We'll let you know how it goes.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. That is Mike Tannenbaum, former GM of the Jets, former VP of football operations with the Dolphins.